Nervous Breakdowns with G number 4. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast where I answer your questions about mental health, dating, personality, or basically anything else you want to know with regard to human behavior. I'm a nationally certified counselor. My name is Gino. I have 10 years of clinical experience in the field treating people with mental illnesses, and I'm doing this little podcast as an experiment to try to have a little fun and talk about some stuff that's interesting. So for today's podcast, I'm answering the question posed to me by a very good friend of mine. This is a woman in her early 30s who wanted to know what are some things that she should look for in relationships. She feels as if she's not able to meet somebody that she has a connection with. She dates lots of different guys, and after a little while kind of moves on. She doesn't feel like she has any chemistry, or she wants to know, things like, is it true that opposites attract? Basically, any kind of information that could increase her chances of success in the relationship. And for you listeners, I promise you this girl is very attractive. She's very normal looking. She has the right number of arms and legs and heads, and everything's in the right places. So it's not a matter of her having there's not an obvious problem. It's not something that you could point to and say, well, yeah, that's why you're not being successful. So I asked her for more information, and basically she was able to identify that she just doesn't have this sense of chemistry with people. So I thought about it at length, and believe it or not, it kind of led me to the topic of movies. I was thinking about the kinds of movies that men and women watch. Now, don't get me wrong. I enjoy a good movie just like anybody else. But here's the difference between, again, let me back up. I'm generalizing here. Not all women do a thing and not all men do a thing. But when movies are developed, they're definitely developed with an audience in mind. And I would say that certain movies are developed to appeal to men, and certain movies are developed to appeal to women. So I'm going to talk about those at length today. When I go watch movies, such as the movie Pacific Rim, which if you haven't seen it is fantastic. It's so bad it's good. But it's a movie where you walk in and you're going to have fun for 2 hours, okay? But after I see a movie like Pacific Rim, I don't walk out and have this conversation with my friends. Did you guys see what happened in that movie? That definitely, I need more of that in my life. I need to fight Godzillas with giant robots. And I'm not going to be happy until I can achieve that thing. Even just saying it now sounds stupid. The reason is that it's so absurd, it's so preposterous that we go in, we have a good time, and we leave it there. We come out and we enjoy the experience. The same thing is not true with movies that are marketed to women. The romantic comedy, I would say, is the worst offender of this. And women will leave a romantic comedy and think that that's the model for the way the relationship should be. And girls, you've done this. You leave a movie, you have a great time watching it, but you think that the things that the gentleman, the actor in the movie does for the woman in that movie should be the way your relationship should be in real life. Now, I think that there's a lot of bullshit in those movies. There's a lot of things in the movies that just don't exist in real life. And I'm going to start with something basic. Look at every romantic comedy you've seen and look at the jobs that the stars have. The male and female stars have jobs that normal people don't have. For example, the movie Life as We Know It. Katherine Heigl. Here's the premise. Katherine Heigl and Josh Duhamel, or whatever his name is, are people that don't really like each other. They have mutual friends. The mutual friends die in a crash and leave this couple that don't really like each other a baby. Now, before I even move on, let's talk about how ridiculous that premise is. First of all, if you're going to leave somebody and name them the guardian of your child in your will, you're going to have a conversation with them about it. These people were completely blindsided. They now have a baby together, and the people don't even like each other. Josh and Catherine, they don't like each other in the movie. All right? Going back to the jobs. Katherine Heigl is a bake shop owner. She's in her mid-20s maybe, and she already is a business owner with a successful bakery. Josh Duhamel is a sports producer. And most importantly, neither one ever has to be at their job. Neither one has a boss that's riding them. they leave the job, they feel great, they feel fantastic all the time, and they never complain about their jobs. They also have jobs that tend to be creative ones, where they have people working for them or they're in charge. Knocked Up, for example. Knocked Up is a movie that most men, I think, would enjoy also because it's a good comedy as well. But in Knocked Up, Katherine Heigl, again, is like an E! News reporter. In the movie This Means War with Reese Witherspoon, Reese Witherspoon is like a consumer. She tests products for people. These are jobs that no one has, like a percentage of the population that's almost not worth mentioning has. And they're jobs that they apparently never need to attend. You never see a romantic comedy where the actress, the star, is, screwing things together all day on an assembly line or typing up papers for a crappy boss all day. So what happens is when you have a situation where the people have a relatively stress-free life, it's already not a representation of reality. There are some people in romantic comedies that have bad jobs, but the people are always the men. For example, in the movie Knocked Up, Seth Rogen is a stoner loser who's trying with his friends to start a porn site. In the movie This Means War, the guy's a sports producer, but I'm sorry, This Means War is about spies. Nobody has that job. Nobody's a real spy. But the point I'm trying to make is when there is a person with a crappy job, it's the male. And this relates to the next topic that I'm going to talk about with romantic comedies. The men that are the desirable men in the movies are essentially grown children. Without fail, the men in the movies are the ones who womanize, who have either they're underemployed, like in the movie She's Out of My League. The male star is a TSA agent, but he really has aspirations of doing greater things. In the movie Knocked Up, Seth Rogen is basically a slacker. The women have it together, the men don't. They don't have it together professionally, and in most cases, they don't have it together personally, in the sense that they can't commit, they can't basically treat any woman with respect other than their mother in most of the cases. So what happens is, this is where we start to talk about opposites attracting, right? You have the put-together woman with this out-of-control, childish man. And the movie is really not about opposites attracting, because the movie ends when the guy changes to conform to the woman, when the guy settles down, when he becomes more of a grown-up, when in The 40-Year-Old Virgin, for example, he sells all of his toys to have a more adult life with his new partner. Furthermore, the woman actively chooses, when given a choice in the movies, really the less suitable partner. In the movie This Means War, the premise is that Reese Witherspoon is being and basically engaged or chased by these two spies who are competing for her affection. And first of all, that movie has a preposterous premise, because the two guys are relatives of some kind of, it escapes me right now, but they're either cousins or brothers, and they're actively pursuing the same woman and staying friends, which would never happen in real life. I can't ever think of a time when I've competed with a guy for a girl in that way. And when it has happened accidentally, the minute the interest is clear one way or the other guy backs off. So they're not good friends. But in any case, one of the spies, is a guy who's kind of a family guy who had just been divorced and who's looking for somebody to settle down with. He's a guy who has demonstrated that he can be committed, who wants a stable lifestyle. The other character is a womanizer. He who basically does everything wrong to try to pursue Reese Witherspoon. He takes her to like these trendy clubs. He's trying to show off and be flashy for her. Guess who she ends up with? The flashy, emotionally unavailable guy at the end, and he eventually conforms to her standards. So he becomes the other guy in a sense. He becomes the family guy. So when we talk about romantic comedies being bullshit, there's just so many aspects that in which they set you up for an unrealistic idea of the way relationships should go. We have these insane premises where, and again, they're movies, just like I like the giant robots killing the Godzillas. I get it. But these insane premises where women are expecting the men, through the force of their specialness or their love for the women, to change everything about their lives, to change their personality traits. In essence, the message that they're telling you is, don't actually choose a partner that has the qualities you like. Choose somebody that's the opposite of those things, and if they really love you, they'll change for you. Research proves over and over that opposites don't attract. That when you look at successful marriages and successful relationships, it's people that have the same qualities that actually work out. They have the same goals. They have the same preferences. When they identify qualities that they like in their partner, they also identify themselves to have those same qualities. So the message that you're getting from these movies is one that's just flatly false. It's a lie, essentially. The other thing is that, in spite of all these differences, the other idea that these movies give, which is bullshit, is that in spite of all these differences that the characters have with each other, that they know something through their chemistry or through fireworks that they feel that's kind of beyond logic. That the logic of the situation essentially does not stand up to this visceral, like this romantic passion that they feel. This is also bullshit. Everybody feels chemistry at the beginning of a relationship. Our brain goes through changes when we're with a new partner. We've all been through it. In the first 6 months of a relationship, you can't not think about them. Everything that they do is fantastic. You find yourself in situations where quirky, unusual things you think are so cute that they do. And then 6 months later, after the relationship has, gotten a little older, the very same things that you couldn't get enough of before annoy the ever-loving crap out of you. Why is that? Our brain chemicals change when we're in a new relationship. Serotonin and dopamine are flooding our brains. We become almost obsessed. We have that kind of infatuation with this new partner that makes us want to be with them all the time. Now, an evolutionary psychologist might say that this happens and it lasts just long enough to get your partner pregnant. Okay? That this is something we've evolved to improve the chances of creating more of your genes. And think about it. During that time, you are the most sexually active you're ever going to be in your relationship. So it kind of fits together. It makes a lot of sense. But here's the thing. Our chemistry can be wrong. Through our lives, through our experiences that we have, our chemistry can get screwed up. Let me give an example. Let's say you're driving a car and the speedometer is off by 10 miles an hour. And repeatedly, you find yourself getting speeding tickets because you're looking at your speedometer and it says 65 and you're in a 65 zone. Your car is actually traveling at 75. And cops are pulling you over and saying, hey, you're speeding. Our chemistry can do the same thing. Our chemistry can tell us, hey, this is a good partner for us. And we can get in trouble over and over and over again. So you have to ask yourself, if you're going by your chemistry and your chemistry is selecting for you bad partners, maybe your chemistry isn't the best tool to use to pick a partner. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer in this situation. I encourage, when I have my clients and I see them, to be a scientist, to do experiments. But part of being a scientist is that when your experiment has been proven over and over again, you should try something different. And just like if you are driving a car with the busted speedometer and you keep getting a negative consequence, you might start to either go and get something fixed in the car so that the speedometer is now accurate, or you might use other things, like you might use your rev limiter or your tachometer, what tells you how your motor's working to judge your speed, or you might try to pace other cars that seem like they're doing the right speed. But you would do other things to try to stay out of trouble. In relationships, we don't do that. We continue over and over again to make the same mistakes, following our chemistry. In my podcast about enabling, I talk about a study where the children of alcoholics tend to prefer manipulative people. They tend to rate them as more favorable than nurturing people. What you're seeing there is a person whose chemistry has gone out of whack because of their relationships as a child. Their parent, they grew up with a parent that had a certain behavior pattern that they identify as being safe, which is, addictive behavior. And they seek that out in their partners. And children of alcoholics and drug addicts end up with partners that are alcoholics and drug addicts. The same thing is true of victims of abuse. When you have a parent that abuses you physically or sexually, you are very likely to end up in an abusive relationship with your partner. The chemistry of these people is wrong, and when they follow their chemistry, when they meet men and pursue men or women that feel like they have fireworks with, they end up serially and continually picking people that abuse them. We've all heard stories about that where, a person gets abused by one partner after another. There's nothing, all men are not abusers and all women are not abusers. There's something about that person that leads them to pick the same type of partner over and over. This happens to a lesser extent in the example of the person that asked me this question, because she keeps picking people that she's looking for chemistry with, and they're just not good partners. They're unemployed, or they're not interested in a relationship, or they're unavailable. And how many times do you have to do this experiment before you learn that the chemistry is not a great indicator of who your partner should be? So when we talk about chemistry, we talk about opposites attracting, which, by the way, what does that even mean, opposites attract? What are we talking about? Are we talking about your level of cleanliness? Can you imagine being a neat person and living with a messy person? Is that supposed to be romantic? Doesn't seem that way. If you're a lazy person, should you seek out a hardworking person? Maybe. I mean, I guess I've heard of where people say they balance each other out. Like somebody is more, not so much hardworking, but more anxious to the point where they're uncomfortable, and they meet a partner that's more relaxed and less active, and they balance each other out where the lazy person becomes more active and the active person becomes more relaxed. But I think that in those cases, you really have to be almost kind of be pretty close. You're talking about a small difference for that to work, because I can imagine a panicky person doing well with somebody who doesn't. It's impossible to motivate. What about things like, your attitudes about relationships? Should a person who's looking for monogamy seek out a promiscuous person? According to these romantic comedies, they should. And according to these romantic comedies, it's not a big deal, because if the person really loves you, they'll change. I hope that this is sounding as stupid as you're hearing it, as it is as I'm saying it. And we see it over and over again in these movies. As I mentioned, This Means War. A woman is being, courted by two spies. One seems to be a pretty stable guy. One seems to be like the womanizing pretty boy type. Who does she end up with? The womanizing pretty boy type, who incidentally changes everything that he was before to become what she wants. In Life as We Know It, again, preposterous premise that a relationship starts with a surprise kid. I have kids and I love them, and I can tell you nothing about my relationship got easier when they came around. But I mean, think about all the people that have tried to have kids to save a marriage. You might ignore each other while you have the kids, but the marriage isn't any better. You're just not fighting as much because you're not paying attention to each other. But in that movie, you have a couple who tries to date. They hate each other. They have nothing in common. They end up with this kid together, and the man changes everything in order to be what the woman wants. And then lastly, Knocked Up. You have a couple that have a one-night stand. They're drunk. They have another surprise kid, Katherine Heigl. You have a trend happening here, and they decide to try to make a relationship work. But it only works when Seth Rogen, does all the things that he hasn't been doing before. He becomes a more traditional worker. He becomes he stops smoking weed. Again, are these things probably good for him? Sure. But the message is the same, and it's an unhealthy one. The message is you can change your partner, and if the partner changes, it makes the relationship good, as opposed to using your brain and picking a partner that's already has the things that you want. People don't change that easily, and whenever you try to force somebody to change, you're inviting resentment into the relationship. So I guess the question I have to ask is, why are you getting into a relationship if your intent is to change the other person? Why not find the person that fits your wants and date them? In episode 1, I described that sometimes people are just insecure and they don't feel like they can meet another partner, so they become very clingy with the partners they have. So that's a separate issue. I mean, I don't think that there's a one person for everybody. I think that if you meet a partner, it doesn't work out, you can meet another partner and do pretty well with them. So, at the risk of repeating myself, romantic comedies are bullshit movies. In fact, some of them are flatly insulting. I mean, just the premise of movies like Life as We Know It is ridiculous. And the plots are transparent. I just don't like them in general for the most part. There have been a couple of good ones, but they just also have this theme where the women have it together, or the women sometimes need to learn how to love, but otherwise they have everything together. And they have the men who are these giant children who only find love when they conform to what the woman wants. So what I think happens is that women who watch these movies and don't appreciate them for what they are, which are works of fiction, leave, and they have an unrealistic expectation of the way a relationship is supposed to be. They keep expecting, as they're progressing through these relationships, to have this, fireworks moment, or this magical chemistry that removes all doubt from them, that makes them know without a question that the person that they're seeing is the right person for them. And I just don't think that exists. And furthermore, I don't think that that's healthy if you do have it. I think that when you have that kind of certainty, what you're really experiencing is like the early relationship infatuation that's driven by our brain chemistry and our evolution. And I don't think it necessarily makes for a healthy relationship. I think, in fact, what it makes for is a kind of an obsessive relationship that will lead to disappointment later, because that wears off. You can't maintain that level of investment in a relationship. It's just your brain can't sustain it. When it comes to opposites attracting, we have the science. The science shows that it's not true, first, and secondly, it just doesn't equal a sustainable relationship. There's a caveat which I want to bring in here. When we talk about interests, sometimes varying interests can keep the relationship healthy. And those of you that have been in relationships where you spend all of your time with your partner can kind of identify with this. When you spend too much time with a partner and you don't have your own experiences, you may find yourself where you're sitting at the dinner table, for example, and you have nothing to talk about because that person was there with you when it happened. So when you have varying interests, where I have my own life and you have your own life, and then we can meet and share these ideas together, it can be a more engaging relationship. But I don't think that's what they're talking about when they say opposites attract. I think that what they're talking about is this, the prototypical like preppy cheerleader girl and the bad boy like biker boy, and that somehow these two are supposed to get together, and that's like the extra special relationship. And I don't think in reality that works. No more than I think in reality I can get into a giant robot and smash a 50-foot tall lizard. I would sure like to. I mean, it seems like a lot of fun, but it's a fiction. It's not real. Okay? So in summary, I'll leave you with this. Stop watching these movies, ladies. Stop. Send Hollywood a message that you want to watch a movie that's more realistic. You're not the kid or the little girl that's looking at princess stories anymore. Or if you're looking at them, if you really enjoy those movies, enjoy them for what they are, which is a story. Try to check yourself when you're walking out of these movies and you're talking to your friends and wanting a boyfriend that's just like Josh Duhamel, although he is a beautiful man, admittedly. He is not the character in the movie. He's an actor. And he's married to Fergie, if I'm not mistaken. So He's unavailable, ladies. Just remind yourself that. Please, thank you so much for listening. I am very interested in getting your questions. You know, when you guys give me interesting questions, I really have a lot of fun researching them, finding out the answers to some of these questions, and exploring my own thoughts about it. You know, I kind of went off on a tangent about these romantic comedies, but I think that they drive a lot of unrealistic expectations that we have about relationships. Relationships aren't complicated. You know, you pick a normal person, work out problems that you have together, and you'll be successful. But I need your questions, guys. So please, I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things right as soon as this podcast ends. I want you to go onto iTunes and subscribe to my podcast. I'm putting out at least one of these a week. Nervous Breakdowns with G on iTunes. If you use Stitcher Radio, by the way, Stitcher Radio is a great app. You put it on your phone, you can stream podcasts. You don't have to download anything. StitcherRadio.com. Also, Nervous Breakdowns with G. You can subscribe to me there. I want you to follow me on Twitter at Nervous Breakdowns with G. If you have a question, email it to me, nervousbreakdownswithg@gmail.com. Lastly, Tumblr. I didn't know about Tumblr. This is something that one of my I'm calling him my web presence advisor friend. He asked me to sign up for it. It's a great website. You can watch all of my videos there. It's breakdownswithg.tumblr.com, and I link up my YouTube videos, which are basically this podcast with a picture slapped on it. And you can keep up with me there. I also have the YouTube channel, Breakdowns with G. And send your questions. Give me some responses. I would love to hear from you. And thank you so much for listening. Thanks.